Hello again, my name is Dr. Bill Johnson. I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Exploring Our Schools. Today we're going to focus on really an issue which probably arrives in many of our homes on a daily basis because of social networking. It's hard for us not to be involved in some way or another with others through our electronic devices. What we really are concerned about here in Rockville Center is the extent to which our children need good advice from both their families and from us as an institution. We've got to figure out how to make the world a better place for them to live. So I have two people today with me to help me kind of illustrate exactly what it is that we need to do, talk about it in some depth, and they are Katie Shoemaker, who has become a very well-known expert on this subject and has in fact written a book recently called Don't Press Send. So, Katie, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And I have Dr. Noreen Leahy, who is our Assistant Superintendent in Rockville Center and coordinates most of the efforts that we make in developing policies and procedures for, in fact, dealing with the multiplicity of issues having to do with all of the new laws related to bullying and social networking. So, anyway, you know what? I think if you don't mind starting, Katie, just talk a little bit about, I think sometimes telling your story really illustrates about where we came from, why it's a problem, and where we are right now.
I think parents today have a very different time raising their children because technology came in so fast and we all went along with it and without really evaluating its place. And as a parent and an educator, I saw firsthand in my own home how it was really consuming them, and there were really no guidelines.
Well, when we say in your home, you actually, we have to admit, you are a resident of Rockville Center, you
Yes.
have children in our schools, and
Yes.
that's really where it began.
Yes.
I mean, you had twin girls, if I recall, who
Boy,
were...
girl, twins that were in sixth grade, and how this started was a few years ago when they were in sixth grade. I spoke to the middle school and asked them if I could come up with a program after listening to all the problems at Open School Night and said, let me see what I can come up with. So I came up with the pledge and I presented to the sixth grade. This was 4 years ago. And then it blossomed.
Tell us a little bit
from there.
about the pledge.
The pledge is really guidelines and strategies for kids so that they have some boundaries, because like everywhere, we have rules in our schools, we have rules in society, yet in cyber community, as I call it, everything's a free-for-all, and we've all seen what happens when there are no rules. The level of unkindness goes high. Our kids put themselves in compromising positions with the law. So what the pledge is really guidelines and strategies and rules to follow while you use technology.
Yeah. You know, I'm going to use that as a bit of a segue, Noreen, because you did mention the law. So, I mean, that's all context, really. I mean, we understand the relationship between the family and the school to some extent, and how complicated it's getting, particularly with the use of social networking. But there are changes in laws that have recently taken place that really heighten our awareness of the problems that kids can face in the event that they engage in activities which are inappropriate. Maybe you could just kind of talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. So it's interesting to hear Katie's story of how she began. There was like a visceral, instinctive reaction she had to the issues that we're faced with when technology started to very, very quickly come upon us. And Katie and I have had several conversations about the good that
Yes.
came out of technology, and certainly we're witness to that in the district. But there was a negative side, and that was how kids were handling it. And then, just like Katie had kind of an instinctive reaction, so too did the lawmakers who saw some issues with another mechanism, another means by which students could hurt one another or bully one another. Just about every state in the union now has anti-bullying legislation. In New York, the act was called the Dignity for All Students Act, which is a way to protect students from other students or adults who might bully them in some way. And there's about 13 protected categories. 1 year after that law was passed, was July in 2012, an amendment came forward, and that was the cyberbullying a piece of the law, because they recognized very quickly that they hadn't included that. And that's just about how it's interesting to note that the law was catching up with itself. So in July of 2013, we did get an addendum to the law which included cyberbullying. Now, what that means is that schools are obligated to, I have to watch my words carefully, because we don't sit around looking
Well,
at sites or
but
things like that.
we don't.
but-
We don't monitor them continually, we don't watch it. However, one of the more interesting aspects of this is, again, getting back to the relationship of family and school. If things happen outside of school with students who are attendees in our middle school, high school, even in the elementary buildings, we have an obligation to follow up.
We do, and typically what would happen is a student would bring it forward. And and then obviously their educational process is disturbed, and that's the least of it. The social emotional health of our kids is part of what we have to worry about in terms of keeping kids safe, and it is a priority, and therefore it becomes then the obligation of the school to investigate and follow up, and we do.
I do have to say that this, as a former teacher and as a parent, this I bring up at my parent presentations. It concerns me that many of our instructional resources are being spent on these type of situations. I go to many schools, so they tell me this. Now, someone brings something up to the principal, this is what was written, or this picture was shown. Now my principal, the administrators, and social workers are now spending hours of a day researching who said what. So why I wrote this book and why I also developed the app was, let's do a better job at giving them these guidelines to lessen these incidents, because as a parent, I don't want my instructional resources really spent on this. That's a lot of time, of good use of educational time, that I really want it to be put where it could. But I also know on the other side, as a parent, I also have a job, do the laundry, I have to cook. I don't have time to read my kids things all the time, nor do, at my age, my children in high school, they know the rules. If I find out, the phone's mine. That's the other thing parents have to realize. I pay that bill. That phone is mine. This phone holds a lot of clout in your home. So remember that you have that as your, it's in your pocket. If you're not using it right, it becomes mine.
Is there such a thing as a typical problem that you see that
Yes.
is more frequently, surfacing in your discussions in schools? Maybe we could just kind
The
of focus on
sad reality is we have given our children's devices they are not mature enough for. That is the sad reality. And I am one of those people who have done that. So I can say that honestly. I am now hearing that kids are getting these cell phones in second grade.
Okay.
The-
Right.
They can't manage this.
I think
Is
part-
there a point in time when you think kids might be mature enough to handle it?
I would hope a high school student would be. I think that, middle school years are tough and kids are trying to fit in, and still are high school students. And kids do things sometimes just to fit in, and it's so permanent, and it reaches too many, that I just think the device and the social and emotional growth of that age doesn't really mix.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about Katie's work, and I've been following it very closely. And part of the reason I'm excited about it is I think it spotlighted just that issue. It's maybe given parents a moment to take pause and think about what the timing of this whatever device is.
Yes.
It'd be probably fall on deaf ears to say don't give them at these ages, but I would argue that giving a cell phone to a child that's too young to be able to handle it is like giving them the keys to the car when they're 12,
I would agree.
or something worse. And I think you really have to think it through.
You mean you didn't start
carefully.
driving when you were 12?
I did not.
Huh?
So I think that it might be individual, but it also I think we have trends becomes the thing to do when you're maybe graduating.
It is how they're socializing.
As-
That's the problem.
Right.
Is why parents jump in, because I'm in it. Kids do not ring the bell anymore. They don't call on the phone. So if they don't have it, they're out. And that is a reality. And I think that's why most parents do this.
But I think we
because-
can turn. I think we can
Yes,
help
I
turn
agree,
that.
but I
really
think
do.
that's what's happening.
I see a trend.
Really, that's a huge statement.
Yeah.
When you say kids are out if they're not, so they don't even have an opportunity therefore to participate.
Yeah.
What is it? I mean, look, it goes beyond just don't press send.
Yes.
what can we do to help create an environment where kids really are equally desirous of going up and ringing someone's doorbell as they are of getting on
I
their cell
think
phone?
we have to force our kids to do things other than be on technology. We have to. I have one son who is not a sporty kid, so for him, he would love to sit and play video games. I have to limit that. I have to force him. But, you know, I work from home, I do whatever. People are working, it's not easy to do. It's a very different time. We socialized in our streets. We had eye contact. We had lots of opportunities in our life to feel things. Kids are avoiding now with technology.
You know what's interesting about that, when you say somebody stays home and plays games? I mean, you know as well as I do on many of the Xbox types of devices, these kids are actually networking and playing with
Yes.
other kids in other homes, so they don't even have to get out of their basement. They can go visit their friend electronically and participate in a real game with them.
Which is a
But
positive
It
for me.
it is. There's some real positive aspects to this because they're not isolated.
No.
And, you know, there are some real safety issues that we address all the time. I mean, you continue to hear about these vans driving around neighborhoods, and people are really fearful of the world out there. And therefore, they view sometimes these cell phones as a means of protecting their children. Always knowing where they're at, always being able to be in touch with them, and in fact, actually
We need a whole other show for this.
Well,
It's
what I'm
almost-
saying, but you see what I'm saying? In other words, this is a complicated issue. It's not,
Yes,
it's
there's
not
many
simple.
layers.
And when you talk about the motivation that parents have for introducing their children to having these things, it is that they want to keep tabs on them and keep them close.
Yes. But on the Xbox and all these other things, just as they do provide safety in some ways, they're also, many kids are playing Xbox with people they don't know.
Yes.
So there's anonymous sites, our children. My children have cousins all over the country. I love that they're like, oh, we're playing cousins Xbox FIFA at 8 o'clock. They're playing with their cousin in Maryland, in Chicago. I love that. They're building relationships. They're talking to them that they wouldn't build. That's the positive. The other one is, my son doesn't have anything to do. He goes downstairs, his friends are busy. He wants to go play, and he's playing with strangers. That's not okay.
Yeah.
If you don't invite them in your house, you don't play with them. It's that simple. We all know there's bad people in the world. Very easy way for them to get in touch with our children.
It
And they
is.
know how to do it.
Yeah.
I think the key with me, the bottom line with me, is that Katie's work and what we try to do in the district raises awareness. And if every parent just is now
I agree.
aware, the research is catching up with this. Just this morning, by the time I finished my workout, I heard 2 news stories of studies that have come out about the disruption of sleep with children in social media, and then the other was this increased anxiety because they're worried about how many people liked their post. So 2 studies in one morning and 1 workout session.
Yeah.
So they're coming, it's catching up with us. But if we could just raise awareness, if everyone could just stop and think about what they're dispensing in terms of technology to their children and how they're using it, I think we're going to be ahead of the game.
I did,
Yeah.
and, sorry.
You know, I think we kind of have to move over and start looking at things that you might want to suggest to us that might be helpful. For example, I mean, you know, you hear about all of the problems, but if I don't have my cell phone in the bedroom, if I don't have my computer in the bedroom at night, and they're all in a central location in the house that's
Yep.
accessible to the parents.
That's part of the, yeah.
Right. What you've done is that you have created an environment where, getting back to the disruption of sleep, we continually hear stories about kids in the middle of the night at 3 o'clock
Yeah.
in the morning, tweeting or Facebooking or whatever they're
Right.
doing with their friends. Bad news. That's not
Yes.
what we want.
Oh.
So there are simple things. Are there other things? I mean,
What I,
behind Don't Press Send.
in this
What
book,
is
and
that?
what I really tried to do was, I tried to have the tone be like a conversation like we're having between parent to parent. Like, look, this is unfamiliar territory. That's the first chapter. We didn't know this was going to happen. Now we know. We know, so this is what we can do. We can tell our children not to type things they wouldn't say face to face. We can tell our children not to take pictures or videos of themselves or anyone else without clothing on. We can tell our children not to put their cell phone in the bedroom because it's an emotional disconnect that we want to create. We have to create some boundaries. Set a time for all your family's devices, your school iPads, all devices docked at 9 o'clock. That's it. That's the rule.
Adults included.
Adults included. And the other thing is also, I always say that if you're reading this before your children are starting, it's like good nutrition. If you start from the beginning, your kids are gonna have good nutrition. Me, I'm backpedaling now. It's not easy. I always say I'm verberizing my kids. Well, I didn't do anything wrong. Why are you this? I'm like, it's not a punishment. It's just you have to have some boundaries. I want you to look at grandma's face when she walks in. I don't want to hear that your friend's texting you from the car as for a date and he doesn't come to my door and shake my hand and introduce himself. That doesn't happen. That's just bad social manners. That we're losing good, solid morals because of this emotional disconnect of the screen. And that's the biggest thing that parents need to realize. Why are kids unkind? Because they're not seeing someone's body language. We need, the first lesson is, you see this screen? This is what disconnects you from someone else. You always have to be aware. Think of empathy. These kids today's empathy skills are weakened because of that screen. When I hurt someone and see that, I get a knot in my stomach. And we don't want our kids to lose that intuition.
There's one four-letter word that you just used a few moments ago that's incredibly powerful and important. K-I-N-D, kind.
Yes, on and offline.
Yeah, so.
It matters.
Yes, it does matter.
Yeah.
So how do we utilize that?
I always tell kids to think before they click. Think, how would this make me feel if I receive it? That's empathy. How would it make you think? It feels good to make someone feel good. It doesn't feel good to hurt someone.
Yeah.
But they're not realizing they're hurting someone for the most part because they don't see the damage. But your 300 friends and your 200 friends all saw that. That's a pretty hard thing to handle.
Yeah, I've never had 300 friends. I mean, I don't know how I fit them in my
Well,
living room.
that's the other-
I know.
Yes.
Who is a friend?
What is a friend? And my student presentation, I opened up with that. Describe to me what a friend. Every time, beautiful, loyal, trustworthy, has my back, someone who has similar interests, that's a friend. Well, that doesn't go out the window when friend requests come. Because the other thing is, like Noreen said about the like button, they throw something out there and they get 5 likes instead of the 200 likes. Because not everyone is, there's not enough of me to go around. I have a very large family. I can't care about, to be a friend takes a lot of time and effort.
Mm-hmm.
And they're losing that thing, like when they post a picture, grandma should care, your mother should care, your close friend should care, the whole student body shouldn't care. But they feel hurt by that.
Yeah. We actually have only a minute.
I could keep going.
No, I know that, but that's not the point. The point
Yes.
is, I think what parents, and we become extremely cognizant of the fact that we've got to start early.
Yes.
If nothing else, we
Mhm.
have to walk away from this, whether they read your book, listen to you at a school meeting or a PTA meeting.
Mhm.
I guess the message is start early.
Yes. Yes.
I mean,
The earlier the better.
the earlier the better. Don't
Yeah.
be afraid to start
Yeah.
with your children.
Yeah.
Look, we have kids on iPads in the early elementary grades. I mean,
Mhm.
certainly we are introducing, and I want to say we're part of the problem, but we also want to make sure that we're part of that solution.
Yes. And
Last
that's what
word of
it is.
advice.
It's the solution of the misuse of social media. Social media is not the problem. Technology is not the problem.
Mhm.
It's how it's being abused and used. We can, many of the things that I'm doing online, and I'm sharing this message online, and the power that's coming from it, we have the ability to turn it around. So that when someone writes something unkind, I say, we hear crickets. No one touches it. Just like an upstander we've been talking about for years, well, it's the same thing online.
Okay. I think I'm going to end on what you just said, and the power of we.
Mm-hmm.
We as a family,
Yep.
we as a community, we as a school and family community, we really need to put our heads together and make sure that our children are safe, they know how to socialize, and they have many opportunities to do whatever we believe is going to make them a better human being.
Yep.
So, Katie, thank you so much. Noreen, thank
Thank
you.
you.
I do recommend, I know I'm not supposed to sell books or anything. Your message is a great one. It's
Thank you.
contained in your book.
Thank you.
It's easily accessible. People can find it online on
Yep,
Amazon.
yep.
So I know that, so.
Yes.
And the name is Katie Schumacher.
Don't press send.
You author, that right.
Yes.
Don't press send.
Yes.
Right. So,
Yes.
thank you very much, Katie.
Thank
This
you.
has been terrific. Thank you all for joining us. I think you realize the import of this message, And I'm going to return to something that I think we heard over and over again. This is all about we. You and I working together to make sure that our children have incredibly good opportunities and make sure this. Thank you very much for joining us, and we hope to see you next time. Bye.